pure operations, and you all know how operations people can be a little naughty. You can make out with this clap from Manish and Srijan. But thank you guys, thank you, and thank you to all our panelists over here. Before I get into introducing all of them, quickly, just one bit. In today's scenario, when we look at MICE and what we're talking about, MICE, rat race, MICE segment almost contributes 23% of any business. And some of the large box hotels, almost 30% of the business comes from MICE segment. And that's where it becomes a very, very important segment. But when you look at over the years how MICE segment is moving, while it's a very, very important segment, but somewhere I feel that as general managers or as operations people, we haven't put the right pull-through or the right strategic initiatives behind it. While the pace is there, everybody wants to have market share supremacy, but I think that's more left for rate dilution than to create differentiators. And some of those questions which we'll be talking today will be more on those lines. So let me introduce you to our panel today. I've got Varun with me over here. On my left, Varun heads Leela in Chada, one of the big box hotels, done very well in that part for my segment. Manish, one of the first MICE hotels, Hyderabad Convention Center. No introduction for that, but obviously, Manish, you can talk a little more of that later. Jaco looks after Grand Hyatt Goa. Again, a name in itself within the MICE segment, social segment. And Anil till 2 months back, used to head Grand Chola Sheraton. And I think after ITC Grand Chola Sheraton. Sorry about that.
Sheraton.
ITC Grand Chola Luxury Collection. So sorry about that. We keep on doing that.
Let's get the brand right.
I'm not going to get into brand thing again. But 2 months back, Anil has moved into corporate role, looking after the entire operations. Again, with ITC Grand Chola, nobody needs any introduction to that brand and what that hotel has really done within the MICE segment. So before we move on to our question and answer, I just quickly want to leave open for all of you, if you want to start with any of your opening statements, maybe take 90 seconds or whatever, and then we'll get into some specifics. Over to you, Varun.
Okay, so for me, for my pie of business, over 50% is MICE. So I can't emphasize more about how important MICE to us and how seriously we view MICE, how creative we are getting about making it special for our hotel, and how we are trying to get a higher yield from this part of our business, because this is a defining business for us. The team is completely geared up to knowing what's happening around and trying to anticipate and beat that, like all of us are trying to do here. Is the lifeline of the hotel. And we are lucky that we have a hotel which are 2 hotels built into one. So one hotel is pure MICE, 300 rooms. We have another hotel which is 180 rooms, and they are connected through sky bridges. So that helps us balance the rate. We can play the game better than many others. There is no mix and match of people in the hotel. Separate porches, infrastructure, service elevators, guest elevators, baggage management system, great technology, incredible asset, I think, made with great vision. So we have a strong footing in that area, and we have grown over 30% in 1 year on MICE. So I think it's a good story for us, but we're not complacent, and I'm very, very excited to know what some of the legends are doing, and I want to take some things away from there.
Great, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Manish, Dayya, and represent as General Manager for Novotel Hyderabad Convention Center. This is a very unique setup in itself. It was one of the first and the largest purpose-built convention center. The entire meeting space is close to 165,000 square feet. What is really very nice is if there is something where we can speak about a respectable figure for MICE, and this is, we clock almost more than 60% in terms of our MICE contribution. What is really very, very nice is that this entire convention with more than 37 breakaway rooms is attached to a hotel with 288 rooms, and it brings in a nice complement to a convention center which can offer such large space. The largest pillar-free hall that we have to offer to the delegates that come to Hyderabad city is 65,000 square feet. So that's what really a MICE hotel and its contribution can be, and I'm glad that we were able to bring this hotel as our very first hotel in India. And since then, what Hyderabad has taken away from this hotel is that it's now recognized as the convention capital.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. So it's the same in our case, basically. Our hotel, MICE is such a huge part of it, and it's always important for us to understand how we can differentiate ourselves with the competition, but also locally in Goa, but also nationally. A lot of our competition is actually not in Goa, but in the rest of India. I think the key is to understand how we can make that experience as seamless as possible. How we can, like I said, how we can differentiate ourselves. The market has changed so much over the last 10, 15 years. And what the client wants today, as we all know, what they wanted 10 years ago is extremely different. There's a whole structure of the MICE business has changed. How meetings is being conducted, from being quite formal to being actually quite casual. And that's where the whole millennial comes in as well, and their expectation from the business. The technology part of it, we all have an app here. It's just one small part of the new MICE direction, I can say. So I hope we can talk a little bit about the differentiation. In our property, it's a 57% group MICE business and 43% transient. Big event spaces in the hotel. But what gives us that edge is that we also have these event spaces out of the hotel. So we're talking about 180,000 square feet of space. But we can customize that MICE event that they can be inside the hotel today and have a certain experience, and outside tomorrow with a completely different experience. And as we've talked about so much about experiences today, it's really what it's all about. Driving rate and not diluting rate, I think that's where that unique differentiation elements will start kicking in.
Sure. Thank you. Anil?
So as everybody's mentioned, for me also in ITC hotels, I personally believe that MICE is really a game-changing segment. It can really be a game changer for any hotel. When you look at the RevPAR index on a weekday or a weekend, I've seen some very successful hotels who can manage both sides extremely well. And ITC also offers, from mountains to beaches, we have all kinds of facilities available. We have all kinds of hotels available. So depending on the size, depending on the experience that you're really looking at. And as he mentioned, the whole battle started with rates, but I think it's slowly drifting towards experience. And the best part of MICE that I like about being an F&B guy is that the result is declared in 24 hours. You work many days, you work many hours together to get that one 24 hours job together. But the day that actual event takes place, you can go back, when you're driving back home, you have that sense of absolute satisfaction. So as a general manager, I think it's an important segment that you need to understand. You need to take the right calls, because most of these calls have to be taken much in advance. Are you taking the right call on that particular day or that particular month is fairly critical. I think product is there in every location. A lot of infrastructure work which needs to be done in the country, because we don't have a great support system as yet. If you really look at the kind of MICE that we would do in India, is probably not even 1% of the international conferences that take place in the world. Your rank is 24 or 25 in the international events. We need much more of that. What's going to happen in Dwarka, I think what's going to happen in Bombay with the Jio Bandra Kurla complex, what's going to happen in Pragati Maidan, these are all good stories which are coming forward. Hyderabad took the lead, hotels blossomed around there. Some large facilities have come up, like you mentioned in Hyderabad, Goa. We have a fabulous hotel in Goa, Chennai. So there's some great examples coming forward. We're looking forward to some good times, but I think there's lots to be done, which is like lots like a private-public partnership.
Sure. That's great. So good to know future is bright. Let's stick to one of the theme when I was listening to all of you, 40% mix, 47%, 57%. You guys have very healthy business mix when it comes to MICE. And you all run great hotels, big MICE hotels. Let's start with you, Anil. Don't want to get specifically into numbers, but MICE ADR is always one of the lowest when we look at across. What do you do differently to stand apart from the crowd? And anybody can jump in later on after that.
So when we entered Chennai had about 1,100 five-star rooms. We had 5 or 6 hotels opening around our area. The inventory went up to 3,000 rooms. Chennai had never boasted of large MICE events. When we started, obviously it was a rate war between Delhi, and the choices were between Delhi, Mumbai and Chennai. Very difficult to get people into Chennai, because after you've got everything going, people said, what will I do? Or what would my spouse do? And to make a list of, you would end up between temples and shopping. You couldn't go beyond that. So it was very important to get the entire experience right and make sure that you're not only fighting on rates. And that's how the whole journey started. The facility is phenomenal. In terms of large banqueting facility, this was the best, the largest hotel that I've worked in my career. 25,000 square feet of pillarless space. You could, walk in, walk out from 8 different halls, various sessions. So we started demanding a particular price. It was tough to begin with. I must admit, the first 1 or 2 years were really tough. We had to give the industry rates, what was prevalent in Chennai at that point in time. And then we started realizing, the number of facilities in India are limited. How many hotels, you can have a wedding for 400 rooms together? How many hotels you can take conferences together? We can get 500 people together under one roof. You can have morning, evening, night. You can have your breakfast, lunch, dinner, entertainment, etc., and things like that. So there was a luxury of space, and that's the time we decided that we have to start charging for that. And that's how we broke a huge myth that my segment will have the lowest. There were days and months in a year when your MICE ARR would actually be 1,000 rupees or 1,500 rupees more than the corporate ARR. You would shut down your corporate to pick in that MICE at that point in time. There are some colleagues sitting over here. My head of sales is also here. But as I said, you got to take the right calls. You got to take these calls much in advance. Sometimes you take a right call, sometimes you don't take a right call. Experience works. But most importantly was the entire experience of Chennai. And then we became the bellwether hotel. So my best friends would call me every Sunday and say, when is the next big MICE? Because that's the time then you start shutting down categories and hike up their prices. Right. But you just need to fight on experience. Otherwise, you're going to keep getting battle, and as your topic says, rat race, and that will continue. But you fight on quality. I think and we're fortunate. We work for ITC Hotel. Your food is absolutely phenomenal. Your backup is extremely strong. So it is not it's just not the conferencing experience. I think it's the entire experience from an airport arrival to the departure and back at the airport. So it's a whole canvas that you paint.
Let me throw this question to you as well, Varun, because you at one point in your opening segment said you've grown by a good 30% over last year in this segment.
That's right.
What did you do differently to grow, and how are you standing apart from the crowd? While, location-wise and all, you're still competing with main town hotels. How does that work?
Actually, I have a slightly different view, and I think what happens is that because we are a large hotel, we are conditioned to think, oh, let's focus on large MICE. So you have paint companies, you have some automobiles, you have pharma.
I'm sure everybody can relate to that, right?
And everyone is trying to go to them, and what do they do to you in return?
Right.
They know everyone is going to come on our doorstep, they want to squeeze you on rates.
Right.
And I think it is such a traditional approach to MICE. So what we do actively is, I think there is a second tier of hundreds of companies who possibly do not have the big ecosystem of procurement teams. They do not work with large event managers, and they are looking to work with partners who can make their life simpler. And they may not be 450 rooms a day multiplied by 3 nights. They may be 200 rooms a day multiplied by 3 nights, but actually all of us know, anyone who's serious about MICE in India knows, that really those 3.5, 4 crore rupee MICE over 2 nights, over 3 nights, is 10 a year. That's it. So, but where the magic lies is actually the second layer, where hundreds of companies are coming to you. You just need to humor them, pamper them, showcase your hotel, be digitally active, take your hotel to them through videos or through other awareness campaigns. And if they start to patronize you, the game will change, because we worry so much about 400 rooms a day, 3-4 days, so 1,600 room nights, but there is a parallel opportunity, slightly smaller. You can build more quality because numbers are less.
Right.
So the menus can be more bespoke, the services can be better, rooms are organized better view is given, the last room is not utilized, the PPM is better because not all rooms are taken all the time. You just run a better hotel, and yield is better. Because these are second tier companies, they are more likely to negotiate less and pay you a little more. And if you can bring in a turnkey solution like we do, I'm a hotel close to the Old Delhi side. We do a whole Old Delhi evening with our compliments. It's built into the package. Mm-hmm. So people don't have to worry about how do we do the whole entertainment, how do we rope in a celebrity, how do we rope in cuisine, how do we bring some vendors from there, how do we get a kulfi wala from Karol Bagh, all these things. And then we spoke about what can spouses do. I am on the expressway to Taj, so when people are in the conference, the spouses and kids go a day trip to Taj. We have signed up with a hotel, they're a very nice hotel, they have lunch there. But we have tried to make business simple.
Right.
And we are looking at the second, third tier of a lot of organizations who who actually do not have big ecosystems. So if we can solve this puzzle for them, they'll love you for that. The repeat business is higher.
Great. That's an interesting perspective. Thank you. I'm going to come to you, Manish, for a simple fact that you run a 280-room hotel with a huge convention center. In terms of MICE language, probably you are the smallest inventory hotel with the largest convention facility. In your opinion, with your experience, do you think MICE hotel is always just about room space ratio, or what else do we need in India and what we want to see in our hotels? And maybe after that, Jaco, if you can come on that. So Manish, over to you.
See, if you ask me, the equal mix is always a plus point, and that is what we should all look forward to. What is not really happening is that we do not have too much of such space available. Now, when we have this kind of demand, first of all, what is very important is for us to create MICE demand. A hotel like us, which has the largest convention facility, we need to have a lot of MICE generation with all the efforts that we put in together, with all the representations that we do. We are still able to bring in close to maybe 14 or 15 international association-based events which come to us maybe in a rotational manner. Now, what else is needed for us to keep going? And that is where the equal mix comes into play. To do this, what we need to do is the entire ecosystem needs to be MICE ready. This can happen only when the government comes into play. This can happen only when the tourism comes into play, where we are able to generate a higher demand, which means, like everyone said, that if we get a MICE event with us, what do we do beyond that? How do we utilize that space? Because space utility is equally very important. How do we maximize what are the other revenue opportunities that we do have based on either the room inventory that is available or the MICE space that is available? How do we do a mix of both? Sometimes in a city like Hyderabad, when we speak about the convention center that we manage, we do almost close to 30 events which are large scale size beyond 2,000 numbers. There could be almost 11 events which are 4,000 plus delegate events. Now, what does this do? This generates that kind of demand wherein it's not just us or the hotel which I manage earns or churns based on the room ratio or the meeting space ratio. It's the entire city which benefits out of the MICE that we are able to pull through with the size of convention that is available, or the size of space where we are able to do not just a convention based need, but we are able to give them a space for exhibition. We are able to give them the experience through social evenings, through maybe an indoor space, an outdoor space. I think at this point in time, what is really needed is we need more and more of such space so that we are able to bring in the respect at the global level, where our contribution or maybe our ranking in terms of doing such large scale or bring in international association based events is not really very high. Now, this can happen only when we have a good mix and we are able to get more and more such healthy mixes, because what happens is maybe a city like Hyderabad is more convention, more professional events and MICE-driven spaces, but maybe a place like Goa definitely thrives on destination weddings. So it's still part of the overall business. Maybe we still utilize the space and quite effectively to the occupancies. And when I say occupancies, we measure occupancies not just the hotel rooms, but also the event space. We've got 37 space to sell. So we look at both the occupancies together, and that's where I feel that when we all contribute together and when there are forums where there has to be a bureau, and like how we were talking about in Hyderabad, which is again very unique, and because of being a convention capital, there is an organized bureau which is called the Hyderabad Convention Visitors Bureau. We pitch in together. They represent the government, we represent the bodies where we have services to offer, and it's not just restricted to hotels. It's all the infra support that is needed, whether it's the audiovisual support, whether it is everybody else.
I want to hold on to the private-public partnership right now. Jaco, let me just change this question to you. In the same fashion, you're running a successful hotel. If you have to change anything in your hotel, what would that be? You're a MICE hotel, but you've now been there for a good 5 years. What would you change if you had to?
See, one of our biggest challenges probably is the fact that, that we have that ratio. It's a positive and a negative, that we have this ratio between MICE and transient, that we can switch depending on how the season goes, or if there's a valley in the market, that we can switch from MICE to transient, which is the good part of it. The only negative part is when you have a hotel that's usually quite busy, once those two markets overlaps, it becomes a bit of a war zone. So ideally, I would like to open another hotel next to me only for leisure.
Right. Okay. Great. So you need another hotel. So
Correct.
what you're really saying is that room
I would
space
like-
ratio, if I have to take away room space ratio, don't worry too much about that. Have more rooms built if you have good transient demand, because MICE will keep on doing your banquet space occupancy.
In my case, yes.
Yes,
See,
yes.
to take you just a few years back, about 5 years ago, I remember when I started, I was trying to understand why would someone come to Grand Hyatt Goa, and my team would tell me, you know, we have the biggest room inventory and we have the biggest event spaces. And I didn't get that. I felt there was something missing because I did not want to go out to market and say that. I didn't want that to be my message. So we've really decided to look at it more on a long-term strategy and to see what are we going to add to this hotel to give it more identity. Because we've all said how the market has changed and how the requirement has changed to experiences. So literally from that time until today, we've added a sailing center, we've added the casino, and we've added the adventure park.
Sure.
So those are the things we thought would help differentiate ourselves to attract that new market. But the problem that we have now is you are stuck in the middle sometimes. So that's why I'm saying if we could separate those two, touch wood, if the market continue growing at the rate that it is growing, that'll be my dream, and my own. It just depends on how my owner reacts to that.
Great. Right. Let me talk about demand. I want to come to you on this, Anil, because you wore both hats, active general manager. Now you're in corporate position. Demand generation, above property sales. All of us have national sales setups. Do you think it really works when it comes to my segment? If yes, why does it work for you in IDC? And
I
if
think
no,
there is definitely demand, and the segment is growing really well. But I think what is more important for me is conversion. There are enough leads hitting everybody, but how do you convert every caller into dollar is the biggest question. So I've seen some phenomenal MICE managers who are very fast in decision making. You've seen some very slow guys who think a lot, can't think about the future and things like that. So there is demand, and as he mentioned, the demand is growing. I mean, all industry data says that MICE is growing at about 8 or 9% every year. So which is a good number. With the all of us are doing between 17 to 21 or 22% MICE business in the business hotel segment. Obviously, these guys do much more than that. So there's enough demand which is building up. But remember that you are not just going to compete, between that city or one city vis-a-vis other city. You got to competing against the other sitting in there. You're competing against Singapore, you're competing against Thailand, you're competing against Japan, you're competing against China. Look at what happens when you land in Singapore. Look at the facilities which are available there. Look at the infrastructure which is available there. Look at the entertainment that's available there. Look at the shopping which is available there. What happens in some of these destinations? I mean, you got Agra, you got Jaipur, you got Goa, which have tremendous potential, which has got everything going. So if somebody can, which I said initially, that if there's a private-public partnership, when you join hands, come together, the whole city can boom. You imagine what happens with one event, like a aero show in Bangalore. I mean, I know there are GM sitting over here. That's the only time every alternate year you smile. Because that's the only time when you actually sell your room at rack rates, and that you wish that, okay, I wish my rack rate was slightly higher. And the next year you have to answer why you're showing a degrowth over last year, right? So, I mean, life goes on in that particular fashion. What happened with Def Expo in Chennai last year? But you got to pick up these large events. Somebody has to hard sell India and say, this is the place, this is the city, and I can create this for you. Look at our taxation vis-a-vis some other countries. Okay, government is trying hard. E-visas have done well. The numbers are growing, they're multiplying every year. Okay, the ease of getting a visa has changed, which is phenomenal. So you got to keep on doing some of these steps. So as people keep talking about the Dwarka or Pragati Maidan or what will happen in Mumbai now. So these are things, they will create demand. We've had some phenomenal events in India, in Chennai, which I had not heard of. I mean, being an F&B guy, you've grown up in this entire community, but we got these international conferences which I had no idea about. But they chose you because India is an emerging story. People, they want to bring people to India. They want to show what India is all about. All right, so these agencies, they want to come and they want to showcase the world. And we had some fabulous results in some of these beautiful conferences. In fact, most of the time when you finish a conference like this, the guy who's hosting next wants to meet you. He's saying, India has set such benchmarks, it's not going to be possible in Australia, for example. Where are these 100 vendors available to you at your beck and call and things like that? Because Indians' hospitality is unmatchable. You can go 10 times higher, because when you take an event, then you own an event. And you are an absolute partner. That's why I said when you drive back home that night, there's an absolute feeling of excitement and joy that this was a great job done.
Corporate job has really, really changed you. You've become very, very politically correct. So, National Sales Organization. If I have to ask all my colleagues over here that how many do you think National Sales Organization in your setup, without getting into any brand, is really, really effective in doing demand generation for you? If you say yes, raise your hand. Sorry, Anil, you didn't give me the right answer. Let me get to you, Jaco, on this. Do you think...
Well, I have to answer this.
Yes, you have to. We want to really hear, not because we want to say that, hey, this does not work, but let's assume you, with all your experience, you want to make it work. What would you like to see change in that? That's what I mean.
Okay, look, I can only talk about us
Sure.
from our perspective. We have great support from Hyatt, obviously, from a sales perspective.
Sanjay has already gone.
No, he's left. Yeah, I'm just looking. But one of these two guys might record it, so I don't know if it's safe. No, seriously, we do get good support, but I think we, as GMs, we feel quite often that we need to be closer to the client ourselves. We understand our product better. Once you are directly connected to that property, you become passionate about it. You know the product, you can sell it quicker than someone sitting somewhere else selling 30 hotels or more. In our case, we have a satellite office in Mumbai. They focus on all the metro cities and second and third tier cities. We have a local office in Goa who focus on the local market, which is not that big for us, but it helps filling validates. And we're also going to start now having remote offices and place people in our bigger feeder markets to have them permanently there, knocking on doors all the time. And that's what we feel will probably work for us in our case.
So you're saying deeper penetration into cities where we've not been till now, which will really start helping in demand generation.
Yeah.
Great. Let me come to you, Manish, where I had stopped you on partnership, and then Varun, you can also jump on that. As on the public-private partnership, you guys have been pioneer in that. What do you do differently, and how is it helping you?
Well, to be very honest, once the convention center was set up in the city, there was a need to create demand and bring in a lot of international association-based event. And to do that, there was a lot of efforts put in together. Everyone put in a lot of ideas, and finally, everyone realized that this is not going to happen without the government support. And that's when this idea came up that let's do a NGO kind of a setup where we set up a bureau which is non-profitable. This bureau is purely supported by the government as their representation. At the same time, we are a few hoteliers who are part of this bureau. What we do very differently is that we try to approach many such international forums through the representations that we do with all the association-based needs and opportunities. And there we use the backup of this bureau, which kind of speaks for the government and speaks for the state. And what really happens there is when we are able to push our venues very strongly for the need, and which we are all very confident that it's not just us, the entire support system, whether it's transportation or any other need that a convention or a MICE would be needed. What comes in rightly there is the government's setup, and what they do is they back us up. They sponsor a few events. What happens at a larger portfolio there? That if we bring maybe a Medico-based event, they get lot of investments. This investments finally converts into revenues for the government, and it's a complete cycle. I mean, it's happened with many IT companies, it's happened with many pharma companies, and what really happens is the entire ecosystem benefits. And with this benefit, we are able to create more and more leads through all such participations. But today, what really matters is not the leads. It's more, I would say, the qualification of these leads, because if this forum that we are all sitting here is purely because of the rat race here, we've all got various spaces to sell, we've got different sets of venues to sell. Now, what is very important is to qualify these leads, because everybody is after them. How do we convert them into a business which really matters to us? And at the same time, how does the entire city benefit, whether it is through maybe sightseeing opportunity through transportation, or whether it is audiovisual mix or any other mix which the delegation needs. It's for the extended stay where we organize shows for them, we organize traditional evenings. How does the government support this movement? Because when these delegates are here, they could be anywhere between from 10 different countries to, at max that I've seen, is close to 70 countries. How do we keep them connected? How do we show them what do we have? And that's where this bureau comes into play. We get all the institutions who can come over, they can put in small stalls, we can promote the activities that they can do during the event, post the event, what are the shopping needs that they need, whether it is to do with maybe just pearl, which maybe a city like Hyderabad is popular, or is there anything else which if they do not find time, how do they pick it up from there? And that's where all of us come together, and many such large events that we organize, this bureau comes really very handy, and we all work together, and still very, very unique, though there are so many other cities which have equal large opportunities for MICE, maybe not in terms of the size, but the number of events which they do. But if this is very well backed up with the government, very well backed up with the tourism department, I think what we can do is really bring in a lot of respect to MICE, in the country, and that's what can really help us.
Sure, thank you. Varun, any thoughts on this?
Yes, Jatin, I think, from my learnings are slightly different. Needless to say, the infrastructure, connecting dots, metros and tubes running from airport to destinations, I think all that is a given. I don't want to spend too much time talking about it. As I travel more and I meet more people outside India, and when I talk about large incentives, a lot of markets in Madrid and in Barcelona, Central Europe, China, which is such a big market now, when you talk to more people, they still worry about safety and security in India. They still talk about the Nirbhaya case and the bad light it brought in Delhi. They still talk about hygiene. Most of hoteliers do not go out and talk about ISO certifications and how good their kitchens are. If you look at our C-Vent presence, none of the hotels in India really talk about it. What I'm trying to say is, I think our need as a MICE destination is no different from need of any hotel, any businesses in India, where we need to have an overall upgrade in general perception of India. Needless to say, we need to have better airports, we need to have better connections, we need to have traffic decongestion, we need to have tunnels, and we need to have potable water everywhere. But I think that's the second layer. We don't have to get there as yet. I think at the beginning, I think people still talk about, oh, is your country safe? I don't think people are not traveling to India because we do not have a certain ballroom, or we do not have a hotel which has fountains in front. I don't think that's the reason. I think we still have a primitive issue to solve. And if exit polls are any indication, I think country would have sustained leadership. And I think these are things that I think government need to look at deeply, and the private sector needs to, at least, for example, like our hotel has adopted, and Mr. Anand, who's sitting here, actually, he was instrumental in adopting gardens around the hotel. They were actually dumping yards where they were building metro pillars, and now they're beautiful, flourishing gardens. He started it, we are continuing it. So I think if we can do some micro stuff around our hotel, make it cleaner, make it safer, light it well, I think all of those things are in our control.
Sure.
So I think those are things I really will focus upon.
Great, thank you. I want all of you to give me a brief answer on this, and this is a little interesting. As we were talking this morning about millennials, and they were talking about how you shop, what you shop. Not to say that any millennial will shop for your meeting spaces, but do you think it's time now that we start putting our meeting spaces also online, and people can start booking over there, which can also be another demand generator? Do you think it's time now? Anil, I'll start with you.
I think why not? If it's smaller meeting spaces, you can. If it does not need too much of customization, if you're talking of large events, the availability can be there, but you can't do it. But smaller meeting room, 10, 12, 20 people, you don't really need to call up a banquet manager, etc. So I think it's absolutely fine. It's like a room which is available to you.
And are you doing something about it? Do you think you'll have your meeting spaces online by 1st January next year?
I read your question and I thought about it yesterday.
Great. Jaco?
I'm going to agree with him. Again, in our case, it's too complicated for the moment. You need that personalized customization. The detail is just too much for now, unless you come with some kind of template that you can do it and filter it more somehow. But currently, no, not for us.
All right. Manish?
Pretty much the same, I would say. I mean, it's still a space which has a lot of customization. It has a lot of detailing. There is so much which goes into every event and banqueting space. Maybe it's too early, and like how they both said, maybe for a small boardroom setup where there's not much of customization, yes, it can be done. But for a larger utility, I don't think we are still ready there at this point in time. I think our focus should be in bringing up more such setups, and that is what we really need to look forward, and that is where we really need to work around, is in terms of the lead generations which is required at this point in time. But having said that, conversion ratio is what really we need to all focus on, and that's not really still ready in terms of being an online offering yet.
Sure.
Yeah, I think the same thing. I think online is great for lead generation, but I think for conversion, the negotiation time is longer, the complications are a lot. It has usually a recce, with a pilot team. So I think for lead generation is a great platform, but conversions are still personal.
I had to ask this question because there was nobody kind of giving an answer from Hilton's side. So me being from Hilton, I want to tell you all that we've started putting our meeting spaces online. It's a pilot test, which we started doing in Southeast Asia, and very soon we'll be bringing it over in India as well. Till now, early days, but it's shown us some good results. So I think that probably will be future that we'll start doing that. But having said that, I want to come to another very, very important segment, which is weddings and socials. And I'll start with you, Jaco, on this. Do you think we now probably somewhere need to integrate socials and weddings into MICE, which is a lot more structured? There is a lot more science behind it, as what it is not behind in weddings and social. Do you think it is time to do that? And if yes, if you are doing something, why don't you share with all of us? And then I'll move the same question to others.
Well, absolutely. And our location, socials is growing by the day. So I think this, in our case, the structure is much more there than it used to be a couple of years ago. So I think there's huge scope. Yeah.
Okay. Anil?
Well, we in our hotels, we do MICE W, so we have definitely considered, because it's again a hugely growing segment. But again, the issues and the challenges are the same, because you're not just competing against a hotel vis-a-vis a hotel in a city, you're again competing a country against a country. So taxation again plays a huge part over there. Connectivity on those locations plays a huge part. But it's a segment which is growing phenomenally high. I know I've worked in some hotels where you concentrate so much on MICE, but on peak dates of November, December, Jan, Feb, you'll just shut your diary for the sales team, because you know that your social segment is going to give you double or triple the money. So you just look at the TRevPAR game and just forget about the entire my story out there. But it's a segment that you cannot neglect at all. There's the amount of dollars which people are spending on weddings is only increasing. And to my mind, with the economy growing, I think this will it'll only continue to grow. And you're seeing a lot of NRIs coming back now, which is an important part. Every city, where you take Delhi, Bombay, Chennai, for example, there's a lot of Gulf which comes back to you. And so this is a segment which is definitely a focus area for us.
Manish,
Can
are
I
you
just
into
add to that? Sorry.
Sure.
Again, in terms of, for example, what you just mentioned, we need to yield as much as possible. So you need to be careful that you don't choke a certain period with a MICE event, for example, when you could have had a wedding that spends 3 to 5 crore or something like that. So you need to be very specific to know, or have your finger on the pulse in terms of what's going on in the market on a daily basis. We talked about auspicious dates a bit earlier. Is it as specific as it used to be? Are the younger generation maybe a bit more open to look at different dates? Yes, they are. So that makes our planning also more difficult, because it's quite sad when you have a hotel choked up with a certain group at a certain rate when you could have taken that wedding. So yeah, you just need to be very careful of how you play that game.
Right.
Jatin, I would say that socials definitely is a huge contributor to the overall banqueting business. I think to lot many hotels, especially weddings, would contribute anywhere between 15 to 20% of the entire banqueting space. So obviously this space is very fluid. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. It comes with a mix and match burden. It is very profitable because one evening and you can cater up to maybe a 5,000, 5,500 wedding, and it is absolutely very high on profitable. It can sustain your food costs. It can do many wonders to your stories when sometimes your actual MICE is not going the way you thought. But it comes with a lot of restrictions. Like Jaco mentioned, there are a lot of auspicious dates attached to socials where you will not look at opportunities outside those dates that come along with it. It comes with a lot of wear and tear along with it. One evening and, with the number of people and the kind of our culture is, it's not really very easy. It's very high on maintenance. But at the same time, it is very profitable, I would say. And somewhere, yes, we all need to look at this segment more closely and see how we can further improvise, because I would definitely want to say that if it is 20% today for a hotel like us, I would definitely want it to go up to 25, 26, because with so much of space coming over, you really need to keep going in line with the market, in line with what other venues are doing, in line with what F&B is doing. And this is one area where you can really go and do wonders with food and beverage offerings. You can kind of churn out great rates. You can make your APCs shine through all these offerings. And I think this is definitely a segment where we have come a long way. But yes, there are a few hindrances, like how socials used to be looked earlier. Today, because of the GST implementation, I would say, while for corporates, for a lot of end users, it has been quite structured, but for socials, it has been a dent. It's not really very easy because the volumes are huge, and people, it's a personal event. So people have their own fancies of how to execute the wedding, what levels to take it through. So it is a huge segment, but just now there is maybe a little bit of break there. But I'm sure in the times to come, with the demands growing, and if the auspicious dates are looked at in a very different format, maybe there is a huge chunk lying for all of us to even further capitalize from this segment.
Sure. Varun, let me quickly pick your thoughts on this. Let's be brief, because I really have one question which I want to ask all of you. What do you think of social segment?
It's a favorite segment. Thank you.
Favorite segment?
Yeah.
Great. All the
You know,
Karol
otherwise
bars.
anything for
There's
it.
a lot of emotional connect that a hotel
Yeah,
builds up
it's
in
the
Exactly.
best segment.
And
Yeah.
this is one segment which a GM can actually make or break that social segment. This
Right.
is my belief.
Sure.
You work in any location, you have fabulous product to back you up, great food, great service, but that one man makes a lot of difference. So
Right.
you build that connect, you'll have generations coming back to you. It's like that.
Okay, quickly want to ask you in very brief, 20 seconds each, what are those 2 to 3 key factors which you consider when you're picking up a MICE business 6 to 12 months out? 2 to 3 key factors which are your decision changers or makers or whatever.
For me, is just one factor. I always look at the T-RevPAR.
Sorry, say that again.
I said I always look at the T-RevPAR. I don't look at the second or the third. If it makes business sense to dump something and take this, but as I said initially, you must have the ability to take the right call. You can get completely knocked off on that great day or a great month. So we always sit down together, and because there's a lot of data which is available to you, so you must take those right calls. It's always T-RevPAR.
Okay, Jaco?
Your long weekends and auspicious dates.
Okay.
For us, Jatin, it is business on books, depending on the pace that we are. And second thing, because we run such a large convention space, it is the space utilization, because our revenue model is not just through F&B. We actually churn a lot of revenue through hall rentals. So obviously, for us, that is equally very important.
Sure.
For us, if it helps us meet our numbers and budgets and revenue is okay, we just confirm it.
Okay.
We don't delay, yeah.
Great. In yes or no? Only in yes or no. Varun, I'll start with you. Do MICE promotions or sales make sense?
Yes.
They do?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay. Do online portals or your partners, do they really help you in demand generation?
Yes, through awareness.
Yes, to some extent.
Exposure.
Again, to some extent.
To some extent. Okay, so we're 50-50 on this, all right. Bigger problem. We all know bigger problem, but bigger problem. Is it lead generation, Anil, or is it conversion?
I stick to conversion.
Conversion?
I believe that you get up in the morning, you have enough leads, and with the number of hotels around the country and with the pipeline of Marriott which is backing you up, you do get good amount of leads. I think it's the ability of that hotel to quickly convert that lead, because everybody out there is fishing. You know, the faster you can connect with the customer, the faster you can understand his needs, the faster you can bring everything on the boardroom table and close it, the better it is.
Okay, Jaco, quickly.
Confirm it.
Conversion, bigger problem?
Conversion.
No, I think it's the qualified leads which is a problem.
Okay.
Yeah, leads are enough and plenty, but the qualified leads, which genuinely are leads, because all PCOs are actually pecking for the same business. So same leads are moving in all markets and all destinations for same dates. So qualified lead is the problem.
I think we need to take this offline because Anil does not agree completely with Varun on this. Maybe we can talk more about this. We're almost through our time. If anybody has any questions for any of our panelists, please feel free before we let them go.
They are friends, they won't ask.
Awesome. Thank you. Please, sorry, Jatin.
We're out of time. I wanted to just pick on all four of your brains. You're leaders in the MICE space and you run these big ships. You know, what I haven't heard through the last almost hour is if you look at, and I'll name a few countries, cities, Berlin, Philadelphia, Shanghai, Beijing, Tokyo, Singapore you mentioned, Anil. The challenge is that all of these markets have multi-million square feet convention spaces. So while Manish runs 165,000 square feet, that's as big as it gets in India, unfortunately. What I'm not seeing at all is competing in the true global space where 2 million, 3 million square feet convention spaces exist. I know that's not your job to build, but the question I have for you is, what can we as hoteliers do to enable state-sponsored construction of such facilities? Pragati Maidan and Dwarka are also not in that space. They're still a fraction of the reality of the global MICE segment that you want to operate in, and that's not happening. It's not the real estate developer who's going to build this. It's going to have to be state-sponsored. What can we as hoteliers do to influence that?
Who wants to take that?
I'll take it. I think let's look at it in another way. So what can hoteliers do? To begin with, they can run profitable convention hotels. They can generate employment. They can pay their people well. In turn, children can go to school, can be good citizens. When the business generation is there, employment is there, government will look at it more seriously. We already generate as a sector great employment. I work, in East Delhi. We are very close to Exposition Center in Noida. We have Auto Expo. We have CPHI. We have large conferences there. More and more delegates come here. We can help in building India's reputation. We can help in building digital platforms, and we do. A lot of companies already do. I mean, you have a great platform. I've seen that. It's fantastic. And I think the more confidence we give to our government that we are ready to compete with the world, the more likely they are to really create these platforms. So I think we can play a role. It's not, not that helpless. And if we, to begin with, run a profitable business, I think things will fall in line. So I think we can focus there. It's relatively easy.
I think, Ajin, for us, what is really important, I mean, if we see how we rank, our ranking may not be really very best. We are just now ranked 28th globally. In Asia, we are ranked number 8, which is not very bad. But if you see the number of events, and this data is purely for international association-based event. These are not data on the normal banqueting business or convention business, which we do locally. These numbers are not really very, very high. I mean, the best could be US, which is maybe ranked number 1. It does close to maybe 700, 800 events. India is just now somewhere around 150, 160 events, out of which that pie is shared between 4, tier 1 cities. But what is very important for all of us just now is to be visible. All of us, like I said, we just have one bureau which really promotes convention center. As a country, I think while we may have space, and space is not the constraint, because the average delegation participation that we are talking of based on all this ranking is not more than 500 people. That's the average delegation. I think there are many hotels which can accommodate such space and such requirement. What is important is our visibility. What is important is for all of us to have more bureaus like this where we can all participate, where we can represent not just us as venues, but as destination, as country, and are able to lure such delegations to here. While we have great things in terms of GST and everything else, but how do we attract these international forums to come over here? What do we give them back once they host an event like that, and that word spreads that, okay, if they come over here, these are the benefits which go along. So those are the areas which really need to be worked upon. I think space, we have enough respectable space available to be in that platform and area.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.